Nadia Reeves stared at her computer screen, heart racing. She'd pressed delete, but the file had come back. Someone was remotely accessing the system. Someone was watching her. A message appeared on screen. Close those files. Now, Nadia's hands trembled. The $3 million fraud she'd discovered in Hartwell Construction's records wasn't just a problem anymore. It had become a threat. Richard Hartwell's office was one floor above, but he didn't need to be that close to send threats. The man had eyes and ears everywhere. Nadia had made backups, copied evidence, but was it enough? If she went to the police, would they believe her? What if Hartwell had people in the police too? In her 32 years, Nadia had never faced anything like this. But there was no turning back now. Nadia Reeves had always loved working with numbers because numbers didn't lie. There was always logic, always balance. That's why she'd become a CPA, working her way through night school while waitressing, graduating with honors, and landing a position at Morrison Associates, a small but respectable accounting firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. For 6 years, Nadia had been the reliable one at Morrison's. She handled quarterly reviews, tax preparations, and audit support for dozens of small to medium-sized businesses. Her coworkers called her the calculator because she could spot discrepancies faster than the accounting software. Her boss, Frank Morrison, trusted her completely. Nadia's life was structured, predictable, safe. She lived in a modest apartment in South End, drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, and spent weekends reviewing financial journals and working on her investments portfolio. She had $47,000 in student loan debt and was methodically paying it down. Romance had taken a back seat to career stability. Her last relationship had ended 2 years ago when her boyfriend complained she cared more about spreadsheets than him. Maybe he'd been right, but Nadia was okay with that. Numbers made sense. People rarely did. It was a Tuesday morning, October 15th, when everything changed. Nadia had been assigned a routine quarterly review for Hartwell Construction, one of Morrison's larger clients. Richard Hartwell owned the company, a successful construction firm that built commercial properties across the Carolinas. Hartwell himself was a local celebrity of sorts, wealthy, connected, on the boards of several charities, frequently photographed at galas and fundraisers. Morrison and Associates had handled Hartwell Construction's books for 8 years. The previous accountant, Gerald, had retired 3 months ago, and Nadia had inherited the account. It should have been straightforward. Review the quarterly expenses, verify receipts, ensure everything balanced for the upcoming audit. But something was wrong. Nadia noticed it in the first hour of review. There were expense entries labeled consulting services totaling $3 million over the past 18 months. That wasn't unusual in itself. Construction companies often hired consultants for engineering, design, or project management. What was unusual was that there were no supporting documents. No invoices, no contracts, no names of consulting firms. Just monthly transfers of $150,000 to $200,000 to an account listed as HCS Consulting LLC. Nadia made a note and continued reviewing. But the more she dug, the more irregularities she found. There were payroll entries for employees who didn't appear on the insurance roster. Equipment purchases from vendors that had no business registration. Subcontractor payments to companies with no websites, no physical addresses, no evidence they actually existed. And then she found the pension fund discrepancies. Hartwell Construction had an employee pension fund, standard practice for a company of its size. Employees contributed a percentage of their salary, the company matched it, and the fund was managed by a third-party trustee. It should have contained approximately $12 million based on employee contributions over the years. The actual balance was $6.8 million. Nadia stared at the number, recalculating, checking her work. But there was no mistake. Nearly half the pension fund was missing. She felt cold sweat form on her forehead. This wasn't a filing error or a bookkeeping mistake. This was fraud. Systematic, deliberate fraud. Richard Hartwell was stealing from his own company and from his employees' retirement savings. Nadia's first instinct was to call Frank Morrison immediately, but she forced herself to slow down, to think clearly. She needed to be absolutely certain before making accusations against one of the firm's biggest clients. A false alarm would destroy Morrison and Associates' reputation and probably cost Nadia her job. She spent the rest of the day meticulously documenting everything she'd found. She created a separate spreadsheet tracking all suspicious transactions, cross-referencing them with bank statements and tax filings. She searched business registries for the consulting companies. None of them existed. She looked up the ghost employees. Several had the same social security numbers as deceased individuals. By 6 p.m., when the office had emptied, Nadia was certain. This was a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme, and it had been running for at least 3 years, possibly longer. She was about to call Frank when her computer screen flickered. A window opened that she hadn't clicked on. It was a remote access notification. Someone else was controlling her computer. Nadia watched in horror as her mouse cursor moved on its own, opening the Hartwell Construction files she'd been reviewing. Then a message appeared in a text document. Close those files. Now. Nadia's heart slammed against her ribs. Someone was watching her. Someone knew what she'd found. She reached for her phone, but before she could dial, another message appeared. Don't make a mistake you'll regret. Some things are better left alone. The remote access disconnected. Nadia's screen returned to normal, but the message lingered. She grabbed her personal flash drive from her bag and quickly copied all the evidence files she'd compiled. Her hands shook so badly she could barely plug in the drive. Once the backup was complete, she shut down her computer, grabbed her coat, and practically ran to the parking garage. In her car, with doors locked, Nadia sat trembling. Someone had been monitoring her computer. That meant someone at Hartwell Construction, probably Richard Hartwell himself, had access to Morrison and Associates network. He'd seen what she was looking at. He knew she'd discovered the fraud. She needed to go to the police. But would they believe her? Hartwell was wealthy, connected, respected. Nadia was just an accountant who'd found some suspicious numbers. And if Hartwell had the technical capability to remotely access her computer, what else could he do? Could he erase the evidence? Could he make her look incompetent or malicious? Worse, what if he had connections in the police department? Charlotte wasn't a huge city. Wealthy donors like Hartwell knew people everywhere. Nadia drove home on autopilot, her mind racing. She lived alone in a second-floor apartment with minimal security. If Hartwell wanted to intimidate her further, it wouldn't be difficult. Once inside, she locked her door, closed all blinds, and sat at her kitchen table with her laptop. The flash drive was in her pocket, the only copy of evidence that could bring down a powerful man. She needed a plan, a smart plan, because if she went to the authorities without solid protection, she'd be putting herself in danger. And if she did nothing, Hartwell would continue stealing from people who depended on their pension fund. That's when she remembered Samuel Torres. Nadia pulled up the pension fund records on her personal laptop. Samuel Torres had been Hartwell Construction's head electrician for 22 years. He'd died of a heart attack 6 weeks ago at age 58. According to the records, his pension contributions over 2 decades should have totaled approximately $340,000. His account balance at the time of his death, $0. The money had been systematically withdrawn over the past 18 months, the same period as the mysterious consulting services payments. Nadia felt rage burn through her fear. Samuel Torres had worked his entire adult life, contributing to a pension he'd never see. His widow and 3 children had been left with nothing, probably told the pension fund had been poorly invested or depleted by economic conditions. It was a lie. Hartwell had stolen it. That night, Nadia barely slept. She kept thinking about Samuel Torres' family, about all the other Hartwell employees who had no idea their retirement savings were being embezzled. She thought about the threats she'd received, about how easily Hartwell had accessed her work computer. By morning, she'd made a decision. She couldn't go to the police yet, not without better protection. But she could gather more evidence, build an airtight case, and find a way to expose Hartwell that he couldn't stop or intimidate away. She called in sick to work, claiming a stomach bug. Then she got to work on her real plan. First, she needed to understand the full scope of the fraud. Using the data on her flash drive, she built a comprehensive timeline of every suspicious transaction over the past 3 years. The total stolen amount was staggering, $8.2 million. Second, she needed to identify where the money went. The HCS Consulting LLC payments were the key. Nadia spent hours searching corporate registries, using every database she had access to. Finally, she found it. HCS Consulting LLC was registered in Delaware, common for shell companies, with a registered agent but no actual business address. The LLC's owner was listed as RH Holdings, another shell company, but Nadia recognized the initials, RH. Richard Hartwell. He'd created fake companies to pay himself consulting fees, essentially transferring company money into his personal accounts while claiming it as legitimate business expenses. Third, she needed protection. Nadia researched whistleblower laws, SEC regulations, and legal protections for people exposing corporate fraud. She learned about the False Claims Act, which protects individuals who report fraud against government entities or federally funded programs. That gave her an idea. Hartwell Construction had built several projects for city and state government clients. If Hartwell was defrauding his own company, he might also be defrauding government contracts, inflating costs, billing for work not performed, using substandard materials while charging for premium ones. If Nadia could prove Hartwell defrauded government projects, she could file a CATAM lawsuit under the False Claims Act. That would bring federal investigators into the case, offering her whistleblower protection and potentially a percentage of recovered funds. But she needed more evidence, specifically related to government projects. That meant she had to go back to Hartwell Construction's offices. The next morning, Nadia dressed professionally and drove to Hartwell Construction's headquarters in Uptown Charlotte. Her heart pounded as she entered the gleaming glass building. Richard Hartwell's office suite was on the 10th floor. Morrison Associates had a small office on the 3rd floor where they handled on-site bookkeeping during busy seasons. Nadia had a key card for the Morrison office. She swiped in, relieved to find the space empty. The office had a shared server where Hartwell Construction's full records were stored, more detailed than what was sent to Morrison's main office. She booted up the computer, her hands shaking. She had maybe 20 minutes before someone might notice her presence. Nadia navigated to the government contracts folder. Hartwell had completed 6 public projects in the past 3 years, 2 schools, a community center, a police station annex, and 2 highway improvement projects. Total value, $47 million in government contracts. She began pulling up payment records, comparing them to actual work completed. Almost immediately, she found discrepancies. Materials costs were inflated by 30 to 40%. Subcontractor invoices showed work billed that was never actually done. Change orders were submitted for problems that never existed. Hartwell wasn't just stealing from his employees. He was defrauding taxpayers. Nadia was copying files to her flash drive when she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. She froze, hand hovering over the keyboard. The footsteps stopped at the door. A key card beeped. The door opened. Richard Hartwell walked in. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with silver-streaked hair and the kind of tan that came from golf courses and beach houses. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost more than Nadia made in a month. His expression was calm, almost friendly. "Miss Reeves," he said smoothly, "I heard you were sick. Yet here you are, working through your illness. How dedicated." Nadia's throat was dry. "Mr. Hartwell, I was just catching up on some filing." "At 7:30 a.m.? In an office that's not technically yours." Hartwell closed the door behind him. "Let's not waste time with lies. I know what you've been looking at. I know what you think you've found." Nadia's hand slowly moved to her pocket where the flash drive was. "I don't know what you mean." Hartwell smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're a smart woman, Nadia. Smart enough to understand that sometimes in business, things are more complicated than they appear in spreadsheets. Stealing from employee pension funds isn't complicated," Nadia said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "It's theft." "Theft?" Hartwell's smile faded. "Such an ugly word. I prefer to think of it as temporary reallocation of resources during cash flow challenges. Samuel Torres' widow probably doesn't care what you call it. Her husband's life savings are gone." Something flickered in Hartwell's expression, annoyance, maybe anger. "Samuel Torres died of a heart attack. Tragic, but not my responsibility. His pension was unfortunately invested poorly during the market downturn." "That's a lie. You stole it. You've been stealing from the pension fund for 3 years." Hartwell moved closer, and Nadia instinctively backed against the desk. "Here's what's going to happen," he said quietly. "You're going to delete every file you've copied. You're going to forget everything you think you saw. And you're going to tell Frank Morrison that Hartwell Construction's books are clean. And if I don't, then you'll find yourself facing embezzlement charges. Because I'll make sure evidence shows that you were the one stealing from my company. Your fingerprints are all over these files. Your access credentials logged every search. It would be very easy to paint you as a disgruntled employee trying to frame an innocent businessman. Nadia's mind raced. He was right. He could manipulate evidence, make her look guilty. But she had her own copies, her own timeline. I have backups, she said. Evidence you can't touch. Hartwell's expression hardened. Then you'll have an unfortunate accident. Brake failure, perhaps. Or a gas leak in your apartment. These things happen. The casual way he said it made Nadia's blood run cold. This wasn't just a white-collar criminal. This was someone willing to hurt people to protect his secrets. You can't just kill everyone who finds out, Nadia said, trying to sound braver than she felt. I don't have to kill everyone. Just one nosy accountant. Hartwell reached into his jacket, and Nadia tensed, but he only pulled out his phone. Last chance. Delete the files, or I make one call and your life becomes very difficult. Nadia looked at him. This man who'd stolen millions, who'd destroyed families' financial security, who was now threatening her life, and made a decision. No, she said. Hartwell's eyes widened slightly, surprised. Excuse me. I said no. I won't delete the files. I won't stay quiet. And you can't stop me because I've already sent everything to the FBI. It was a bluff. She hadn't contacted the FBI yet. But Hartwell didn't know that. His face darkened. You're lying. Am I? Check your email. I sent a full report last night, including evidence of fraud on government contracts. That makes it a federal case. By now, agents are probably reviewing everything. Hartwell stared at her, trying to determine if she was telling the truth. After a long moment, he stepped back. You've made a terrible mistake, he said coldly. You have no idea what you've started. I know exactly what I've started. Justice. Hartwell turned and walked out, leaving Nadia trembling alone in the office. She waited until she heard the elevator ding before collapsing into a chair, her legs unable to support her anymore. She hadn't sent anything to the FBI, but now she had no choice. She had to act fast before Hartwell could retaliate. Nadia grabbed her flash drive and left the building as quickly as possible. In her car, she sat for a moment composing herself, then she made a decision. She drove straight to the FBI's Charlotte field office. At the security desk, she said simply, I need to report corporate fraud and government contract fraud. I have evidence, and I'm in immediate danger. 3 hours later, Nadia sat in a conference room with 2 FBI agents and an assistant U.S. attorney. She'd laid out everything. The pension fund theft, the fake consulting companies, the government contract fraud, Hartwell's threats. The agents listened intently, reviewing the documents on her flash drive. This is substantial, Agent Sarah Chun said finally. If even half of this is accurate, we're looking at multiple federal charges. It's all accurate, Nadia said. I've verified every transaction. Mr. Hartwell threatened you directly? Asked Agent Michael Torres. No relation to Samuel, but the name coincidence made Nadia sad. Yes. He implied he'd either frame me for the theft or cause me to have an accident. The AUSA, Patricia Reeves, also no relation, leaned forward. We'll need you to cooperate fully with the investigation. That means wearing a wire, possibly setting up another meeting with Hartwell, getting him to incriminate himself on record. Nadia's stomach dropped. You want me to confront him again? It's the fastest way to build an airtight case. Right now, we have financial evidence, which is strong. But if we have Hartwell on tape admitting to the fraud and making threats, it's game over for him. Nadia thought about Samuel Torres' family, about all the other employees who'd been stolen from, about how Hartwell had looked at her like she was an insect he could easily crush. Okay, she said. I'll do it. 2 days later, Nadia walked into Hartwell Construction headquarters wearing a wire. The FBI had coached her on what to say, how to prompt Hartwell into admissions that could be used in court. She'd called ahead, requesting an urgent meeting about resolving the situation. Hartwell had agreed, probably thinking he could intimidate her into silence one more time. She was shown into his top-floor office, all glass walls and expensive artwork. Hartwell sat behind a massive desk, looking completely at ease. Miss Reeves, back so soon. Have you reconsidered your reckless decision? Nadia sat down, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. I need to understand something. Why did you do it? You're already wealthy. Why steal from your own employees? Hartwell shrugged. Business is expensive. Expansion requires capital. The pension fund was just sitting there, doing nothing productive. It was doing something productive, securing people's retirements. Those people should have saved more of their own money instead of relying on corporate pension plans. What about the government contracts? You weren't just taking from the pension fund. You were inflating costs on public projects, billing for work you never did. Hartwell's expression hardened. You're wearing a wire, aren't you? Nadia's blood froze. Had she given something away? Some tell? Hartwell stood and walked around his desk. Did you really think I wouldn't expect that? The FBI is predictable. They always want recordings. He reached for Nadia's collar, and she flinched back. But he didn't touch her. Instead, he pulled a small device from his desk drawer. White noise generator, he said, activating it. Scrambles any recording device within 30 feet. Whatever you're trying to capture, it's just static now. Nadia's heart sank. The FBI's careful plan was falling apart. Hartwell leaned against his desk. Here's what's really going to happen. You're going to leave my office and never speak about this again. Because I've already set things in motion to protect myself. What do you mean? I mean that as we speak, my lawyers are filing a lawsuit against you for corporate espionage and defamation. I mean that I've already provided the police with evidence that you've been embezzling from Morrison Associates. I mean that your apartment is being searched right now based on an anonymous tip about stolen company property. Nadia felt panic rising. That's all fabricated. You're framing me. Prove it. You're a mid-level accountant with student debt and a grudge against successful businessmen. I'm a respected community leader with no criminal record. Who do you think people will believe? He was right. Even with the FBI involved, Hartwell had resources to drag this out, to ruin her reputation and life while legal battles crawled through courts. Unless. Nadia stood up slowly. You're right. You win. I'll drop everything. Hartwell smiled triumphantly. Smart decision. But I need you to do one thing first. What? Admit what you did. Just once. For me to hear. I need to know I'm not crazy, that all of this was real. Hartwell studied her, then laughed. You want closure? Fine. Yes, I took money from the pension fund. Yes, I created fake companies to funnel profits. Yes, I overbilled government contracts. I've done all of it, and I'll never face consequences because I'm smarter than people like you. And Samuel Torres? A tragedy. But he was near retirement anyway. What did he need that money for? Nadia nodded slowly. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. On the screen was a live stream, broadcasting to an unlisted YouTube URL. You disabled the wire, Nadia said quietly. But you didn't think to check if I was live streaming to the cloud. Hartwell's face went white. What? The FBI is watching. Your lawyers are watching. And now the internet is watching. Every word you said was just recorded and can't be erased. Hartwell lunged for the phone, but Nadia backed away. Within seconds, the office door burst open and FBI agents stormed in. Richard Hartwell, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, theft of pension funds, and fraud against the United States government. As agents handcuffed him, Hartwell stared at Nadia with pure hatred. You think you've won? This will take years to prosecute. I'll be out on bail tomorrow. Maybe, Nadia said. But everyone knows now. Your reputation is destroyed. And every dollar you stole will be returned to the people you took it from. 3 months later, Nadia sat in a federal courtroom as Richard Hartwell pled guilty to 17 counts of fraud. The livestream video had gone viral, garnering millions of views and national media attention. Public pressure had been enormous. Hartwell's bail had been revoked after he tried to flee the country. The sentencing was harsh. 22 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, and forfeiture of all assets gained through fraud. Outside the courthouse, Nadia was approached by reporters, but she declined to comment. She'd said everything she needed to say in her victim impact statement, where she'd focused entirely on Samuel Torres and the other employees who'd been robbed. A woman approached her, mid-50s, tired eyes, but smiling. Miss Reeves? I'm Carla Torres, Samuel's widow. Nadia's eyes welled with tears. Mrs. Torres, I'm so sorry for your loss. Don't be sorry. You gave my husband justice. You gave all of us justice. Carla hugged her tightly. The restitution fund will cover what we lost. My children can go to college now. Thank you. That night, Nadia sat in her apartment with a glass of wine, watching the news coverage of the Hartwell sentencing. Her phone had been ringing nonstop, job offers, interview requests, even a book deal proposal. Frank Morrison had called personally to offer her a promotion to partner at Morrison Associates. You've got more courage than anyone I've ever known, he'd said. But Nadia was thinking about something else. She'd realized during this ordeal that she was tired of just reviewing other people's numbers. She wanted to make a difference more directly. The next morning, she called Patricia Reeves, the AUSA who'd prosecuted Hartwell. Ms. Reeves? This is Nadia. I was wondering, does the FBI ever hire forensic accountants? 6 months later, Nadia Reeves began her training at the FBI Academy in Quantico. She'd sold her apartment, paid off her student loans with the whistleblower reward she'd received. 10% of recovered funds equals $820,000, and started a new life. She specialized in white-collar crime investigations, using her accounting skills to uncover fraud that destroyed lives. Over the next 3 years, she worked on cases that recovered over $200 million in stolen funds. And she never forgot Samuel Torres, the electrician whose stolen pension had started it all. His photograph sat on her desk at the FBI field office, a reminder that behind every number in a spreadsheet was a real person, a real life, a real family. Numbers didn't lie, but sometimes people did. And Nadia Reeves had made it her mission to uncover those lies, no matter how powerful the liars were.